So let me explain this a little bit more in detail, just for a sense of those of you who don't work in the port operations. So for those of you unfamiliar with the system of port drayage trucking, let me break down a little bit how the system worked in LA and how we've seen it works in different parts of the country as well. What we have are something called LMCs, or licensed motor carriers, that sort of arrange for the use of trucks in our ports. Now, the LMCs have business relationships with the retailers like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and their subsidiaries, and with the carriers, which are the shipping lines. In Los Angeles, we probably have about 1,300 different LMCs. So as you can see, there's a lot of them. These LMCs have little to no assets. They're oftentimes just made up of the kitchen table and a cell phone. And they really don't own anything. They contract with independent operator truckers to haul cargo. Sometimes they have a long-term relationship with them. Sometimes they don't. Now, these paid-by-the-load truckers engage in really intense competition, which leads to very razor-thin profit margins at the port. So if you can imagine, with Home Depot sitting on one side of the table and a independent operator trucker sitting on the other side, you can imagine what happens to the profit margins for workers at the port. So what this has done has created a situation where lots of different costs are externalized onto the community. As I've said, some of the environmental costs in the form of pollution, public safety costs in terms of, as you can imagine, a system where you could have as many as 43,000 different truckers coming in and out of the port at one time or another with no way to figure out who's coming in and who's coming out, a huge public safety and national security cost, and a huge social cost, not just in the low wages that the workers make, but the burden on the public system of people who don't have health care, people who's are not able to pay for health care for their children, people who don't even have any of the basic rights that employees have under state law in California. And then another huge impact is congestion on our streets. So it is, if you talk to folks that live in places like San Pedro or Long Beach, these are places near the Port of Los Angeles, they will tell you that almost nobody from these communities doesn't have a friend or a relative who's been in an accident with one of these trucks. They're very dangerous. And lastly, it's literally creates a very inefficient system. So it externalizes the cost of efficiency also on the community. I can give you one example that we've seen in the Port of Los Angeles is there were times, because there was no incentive to do anything else, where LMCs would sometimes say, I have a container over on this dock, and would call up 2 or 3, sometimes 4 of their truck drivers and say, whoever gets there first can pick up that container. So as you can imagine, first, highly inefficient, horrible for the environment, multiplies our problems manyfold. So that's why when we looked at this, there's been a lot of pressure from business interests to focus on just switching out the trucks. They basically said to us we should subsidize the replacement of dirty trucks or let the industry institute a solution. Now, as I explained to you, dirty trucks are just a symptom of the larger problem. If we used our $1.6 billion in public funds, which is what we're going to do, and placed them into the same dysfunctional system with poor maintenance, no capital, we would be facing the exact same problem we're facing today in another 5 to 10 years, and done nothing to improve public safety and security, working conditions, nothing to attract a stable workforce or encourage operational efficiencies. So it became clear to us, if the Port of LA was serious about cleaning the air, we needed to get to the root of the problem, rather than constantly just reacting to the symptoms. We discovered that if we keep this current system in place, we're going to find ourselves in the same situation: dirty, unsafe, inefficient, and reliant on third world labor standards. So we met with a coalition of environmentalists and drivers, and we drafted together a new model of responsibility in Los Angeles where everybody has skin in the game. So let me tell you a little bit in detail about what we did. We put together a clean truck program that basically has 5 parts to it. The first part was what we call the dirty truck ban. By 2012, all trucks that enter the Port of Los Angeles must meet at least 2007 level standards or better, or they can't enter the ports. And starting 2 weeks ago, on October 1st, 2008, we banned all pre-1989 trucks. So that was the first stage of the ban. That's 2,000 of the dirtiest trucks that were taken out of port service. And I think, like New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles had an average truck fleet age of, that was quite old, which contributed quite a bit to the problem. Number 2, we instituted what was called an environmental cargo fee, which I believe was the first, as far as we could tell, was the first environmental cargo fee that had ever been levied in the world, which was $35 per TEU. So for an average 40-foot container, that would be about $70. And we also instituted a set of exemptions from this fee so that we could start to incentivize good behavior at the port. Now, what does this fee mean? It means about, if you're the average cargo owner, like say that you're a Walmart or a Target, it would probably mean about $40,000 in fees per year on your trucks going through. So you have a strong incentive to avoid this fee. So let me tell you about the exemptions to the fee. 1, buy your own truck that's at least 2007 level compliant diesel truck, you pay no fee. 2, get a publicly funded, subsidized truck of an alternative fuel truck running on natural gas or a new hybrid technology. Whether it's publicly funded or you pay for it yourself, you don't have to pay the fee. So a lot of people talk about how the fees are really going up in Los Angeles as a result of this program. We say, if you're a responsible company, they're not really going up for you at all because you're going to avoid the fee. And this allows a lot of new players to get into the port, responsible companies that might not have otherwise been there. Number 3, national security related issue and port security. Some of you have heard about something called the Transportation Worker Identification Card. This is something required by the federal government. They'll do a background check on everybody entering the port. Well, we are, as part of our program, able to implement that a little bit earlier than the federal government is implementing it. So that's also gone into effect this month. So as part of our program, we're able to monitor trucks going in and out of the port a lot more easily than we ever have been able to in the past. Number 4, we have a concession program. Now what this is essentially it's a contract that we have between the port and the trucking companies that are coming into the port that sets some certain basic rules of the game for coming into the Port of Los Angeles. So part of this is they need to transition to an employee-based system in Los Angeles. Other things are, for example, we're requiring that trucks that have to have off-street parking. So one of the big problems around our port communities is a lot of these trucks end up getting parked on residential streets, running through residential streets. It's dangerous for kids. It's dangerous for other public safety reasons, and it's a blight on the neighborhood. We're also requiring things like that they have to have an established place of business. So all things, and if you look at some of the criticism on the other side that people have talked about when they talk about the concession program, they say, well, you know what, you guys at the Port of Los Angeles, you're favoring big companies over small companies. This isn't really fair to the little guy. They misunderstand the program. We don't favor big companies over small companies. We favor responsible companies over irresponsible companies. And we've seen it, and the proof has been in the pudding, because the companies that have signed up for concessions range from large national carriers to very small 2 to 3 truck companies. We've seen the entire gamut of companies coming into the Port of Los Angeles.